But an organization called Breaking the Silence is living up to its name by literally breaking the media's silence on the lives of Israeli soldiers in combat. They've gathered hundreds of testimonies from Israeli soldiers who have fought the country's wars and implemented the occupation of the West Bank. Many of the revelations have shocked the Israeli public, with allegations of abuse coming from inside the army for the first time. The Listening Post's Simon Ostrovsky now on the organization that's exposing the uncomfortable truths about the Israeli army and Israeli national security.
These are statements made by Israeli soldiers about their own service in the war on Gaza in 2009. For the last 6 years, a group of Israeli army veterans calling itself Breaking the Silence has been collecting testimonies from Israeli soldiers like these and handing them over to the media within Israel and abroad. It wants to shine a light on how Israel fights its wars and occupies the West Bank. Their efforts have been applauded by some, but the army they once took their orders from, and some in the Israeli media, call them dangerous radicals.
הארגון הזה, שמגבב גיבובים של עדויות אנונימיות, אי אפשר לבדוק את זה, הם יכולים לטעון מה שהם רוצים.
הטיעון הבסיסי הוא פה, שמדובר באנשים שהם פשוט לא מוסריים.
The entire world, including this group, including Al Jazeera, including The Guardian, including the BBC, are focusing on claims that are made.
So you're saying that absolutely everyone
Israelis.
They feel that we're doing what we're doing, not out of love for our country and our society, but with some kind of evil.
The effect of the revelations brought forward by Breaking the Silence, which has interviewed over 700 Israeli soldiers, has been explosive in the international media, with a number of foreign outlets running front-page stories on many of the group's allegations of abuse.
Breaking the Silence has posted new photos depicting abuse.
But how much influence has their work had on outlets they most care about, the media in Israel?
Unfortunately, the effect is limited. It is not well known in the Israeli society.
There is a sense amongst the Israelis that they're fed up with the kind of peace process, with the kind of news that they read in the papers, the kind of things they saw on TV, that nothing was really changing. Everything's kind of the same, so why even tune in?
I accompanied Breaking the Silence on a trip the group organizes every couple of weeks to the West Bank's second-largest city, Hebron, to find out what they're doing to bring the occupation back to Israeli TV sets. Yehuda Shaul, who was once deployed here as a soldier, explains to visitors and journalists alike how Palestinians have been banned from the center of the city since a Jewish settlement was created in the heart of Hebron. Because of Breaking the Silence's anti-occupation stance, Jewish settlers here often harass the tours. But Shaul continued with the tour unfazed.
Now, everything we saw today and everything we're going to see today is being justified by the Israeli authorities for security purposes.
Here in Hebron, Breaking the Silence is making the argument that the occupation is a brutal and inhumane affair that's only prolonging the conflict. But the question is the Israeli media listening? I spoke to an editor of Israel's most popular English-language daily to find out.
I mean, I monitor all the papers, all the radio stations, and all the TV stations and internet sites on a daily basis constantly. And I can tell you that Breaking the Silence, B'Tselem, Peace Now, when they come out with relevant information, they're covered widely by even the TV and radio outlets that are kind of partly owned or fully owned by the government. This is not a dictatorship. This is not North Korea. This is a free democracy with a very, very aggressive press.
But from Ramallah, the seat of the Palestinian Authority, the view on Israeli coverage was very different.
Unfortunately, these testimonies from such soldiers are being covered mainly in leftist newspapers in Israel and not in the mainstream media. But I should say that these testimonies have been publicized widely in foreign media.
Breaking the Silence made its biggest ever media splash with the release of 26 soldier testimonies a few months after the end of the war on Gaza.
We were told there are no innocents. Everyone is enemy.
But most of the attention came from publications based abroad.
In Israel, you can see the reaction to what we're doing, like the bad reaction, usually, and the criticism. And he's saying that there is a feeling that Breaking the Silence are doing what they're doing out of evil. And around the world, you just see how, for example, Frankfurt Allgemein, which is one of the most important journals in Germany, are given the first front page for reporting about our testimonies from Gaza.
But members of Breaking the Silence say they faced a bigger problem than hostility in the Israeli media. They accuse the Israeli army of launching a public relations counteroffensive challenging the group's motives by highlighting the fact that much of their funding comes from abroad.
Talking about the funding is kind of a way to shift the discussion from the main idea of it. And the main idea is what happened, is the facts on the ground, and this is what we're trying to promote.
The Israeli military has since changed tack.
The IDF doesn't care about the funding. The IDF cares about the principle behind the organization. And the principle here is taking care of the own interests of the organization, not of Israel's.
The army spokeswoman complained that the Israeli military couldn't act on allegations made in anonymous interviews to Breaking the Silence.
Instead of giving me hardcore, hard fact details, it does the opposite. It blurs the faces. It blurs the facts. I cannot investigate anything with this information I'm receiving.
On television, the front page, and on the web, the anonymous testimonies are a controversial issue. Many Israelis, including the soldier patrolling our tour of Hebron, aren't ready to break the silence on the occupation, at least not yet.
Would you give an interview to Breaking the Silence?
I am not agree with Breaking the Silence.
Really? Can you tell me about it?
Not now.
No? When?
When I am not being the army.
More Global Village voices now on Breaking the Silence.
There are no other NGOs in Israel that are working on the ground with Israeli army veterans, interviewing them about their experiences, recording them, and publicizing them. Were it not for the group, we wouldn't know half the serious human rights violations that occurred during Operation Cast Lead. It is the eyes and ears of Israeli democracy.
It's these kinds of actions and these kinds of groups that will save Israel from itself, because no amount of military might ultimately can withstand the moral force of a people who are seeking freedom and seeking justice. As a matter of fact, we're witnessing the spectacular truth in that statement unfold before our eyes in Egypt.
Finally, the art of public speaking is an important one for heads of state, especially in times of crisis. When President Mubarak appeared on state-run TV in an attempt to diffuse the anger of Egyptians on the streets, well, his words fell a little flat. If you missed it, don't worry. The animators at Jordan-based Karabish Studios created their own version of the speech that imagines Mubarak making a more candid concession speech. It's our web video of the week. Enjoy it, and we'll see you next time at The Listening Post.
أخلع مخلع أخلع مخلع أخلع مخلعش يخرب بيتك يا زين يا ابن علي الله يحرقك أصلح إيه ولا إيه جت كل قرف أما أقوم دلوقتي أخطب بالشعب جايز ربنا يهديهم أيها الشعب الكريم لقد تابعت الماتش قصد التظاهرات ولقد رعبتوني قوي ليه العنف ده؟ ما تخلونا حبايب بقى مع بعض. احنا هنصلح. هنجيب السباك والنجار ونشطب الحكومة دورين وكل حاجة هتبقى في السليم، مفيش مشكلة ان شاء الله. انا هضل دايما في خلقتكم. ولو مش عاوزيني انا عاوزكم. وفي الحقيقة أنا لقيت الحل. إيه رأيكم؟
Hello there. Well, there's yet more wintry weather on the cards for us across the states. If we look at the satellite picture, we can see this area of cloud here moving away, and that's the tail end of that huge